Hello, and welcome to Habits of Influence, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly side of entrepreneurship and building a movement to where you become the person others wish to follow. Today, as our guest, we have Laura Cruz, and she is a new published author. And I'm going to let her introduce herself because I don't want to mess up her title or her anything. So, Laura, first of all, welcome to Habits of Influence. Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your new book and what you have going on.
Oh, thanks, Ian. Really good to be here. So, yeah, I'm Laura Cruz. Cruz as in Tom. I've only been Laura Cruz for the last couple of years, so I'm still quite excited by that reference. I am known on social media as the Dream Transition Mentor. What does that mean? It means that I help my clients to transition into their dream life. So I'm not about the jumping from one thing to another. I'm about the transition. And yes, you're right. I just published my first book. It came out in March. It's called Dream It and Do It, 6 Steps into Your Own Dream Life and Business. And I guess it's a bit like having me in your pocket. So you'll hear my voice as you read the book, and it will help you to make that transition.
Now, if I remember correctly, because I just looked this up, your book, didn't it just top the charts? Was it on Amazon?
Yes, yeah. So the day it was released, it was top of the chart. So for the UK, I was the number one mover and shaker, Ian, for the whole of the UK, which I was pretty proud of actually. And I topped 10 categories, and one of them, the key one for me, was business coaching, which was huge. So to top that, I was like level pegging with Simon Sinek, who is like a god to me. So that's amazing.
That's really exciting, isn't it? When we start to see those successes and all of a sudden things start moving. We don't know what when we get there, we don't know what it's going to do. And all of a sudden we hit that. It's like, I did this. It happened.
Yeah.
Like I'm up there. I'm one of them.
Absolutely.
It's got to be a great feeling. So why don't we just dive right in? You tell us how you got to where you are. What drives you? What does it excite you about what you do? And how'd you come up with the idea for this book? And obviously overnight success. I don't want to say overnight success, but the success of it immediately with it.
So my story is I've been working for myself for about 3 years. So I left my corporate role just as the pandemic hit in March 2020. I've been planning it for about a year, great timing. I didn't even know what a pandemic was. But basically, so a year before that, I'd had this thought around the job that I was doing. I had a great job. I worked for a great company. I worked for a pub company, like really good fun, great company to work for, really nice people. But I felt like I'd done my time. I thought, yeah, do you know what? I'd done 4 years. And when I joined the company, I thought I'll do 5 years. And I was coming up to the 4th kind of anniversary. Who will I work for next? If I'm going to move next year. And I just had this moment where I thought, I'm not going to work for anybody else. I'm going to work for myself. And it was really strange because I'd actually never had that thought before. I'd always had this notion that working for yourself was really hard work. You could never put it down. You were always worried about money. You had to work all the hours, all the kind of, rubbish that we get fed about what it's like to work for yourself. And it never appealed to me. I wanted like conventional employment. And then so when I had this thought that I could work for myself, I was a bit kind of taken aback. It was like a bit of an epiphany. And God, wow, I didn't think I wanted that. But once I had that thought, I couldn't let go of it. It was like I'd opened the box and then I couldn't put the lid back on. So I started to explore what I would do if I was to work for myself. And back then I probably was about 5% confident I could do it. And then the other 95% of me was like, oh my God, what are you thinking? You'll never make any money. It's, all this that negative talk. And in the year that I took to transition over to working for myself, I switched it from 5% confident to 95% confident. So I turned it the other way around. And I'm really honest about that because I say there was still 5% of me that was worried, because if anybody says they're 100% about something, they're not telling the truth, because we all have bits where we go, God, this is frightening. This is out of my comfort zone. I don't know about this. You're always going to have that. So by the time I actually went out on my own, 95% confident, 5% fear. And it was a good job I was there, because obviously with the pandemic, starting your first business in the pandemic, what we thought was going to be 3 weeks at home turned into like 18 months or however long it was. So yeah, it was a good job I had been through that process. So as I was growing my business, I've started to think, this is the journey that I've been on. If this is the things that I've struggled with, and with coaching, your ideal client is generally a version of you. So it's you at an earlier stage. So I thought, well, if I struggled with that, if I had to work through my confidence, if I had to kind of self-coach, if I had to work out who I was going to help and what that would mean to me, then I'm sure other people must feel the same. So I decided to write my book because I wanted to get my message and my method and I wanted to share that more widely. So not everybody can stretch to working one-to-one with a coach, but actually pretty much most people can afford to buy a book off Amazon, right? So I thought if I could motivate and inspire and encourage somebody by letting them read my book, then actually that was what I wanted to do.
So creating that impact, whether somebody hires you or not, was important to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you touched on something that I think is so key important which is the fact of shifting that mindset from employee to entrepreneur. And yes. I remember when I did it too, because I was teaching full time. And I was like, right. I was building a business on the side, teaching full time. And I'm like, man, I'm giving up guaranteed income for an unknown. And yeah. I think so many people that are in that mindset of it does transit to like, what if I don't make it? What if I can't pay my bills? We tell ourselves these stories, these what ifs.
Yes.
And then once we make that decision to jump ship, say, you know what, I'm all in, burning the bridges, sink or swim, all of a sudden this magical transformation happens into like things start flowing our way. We start to get these opportunities. We're making room for these beautiful things to happen.
Yeah.
And it's really powerful.
And you know what though? We get really bogged down with the what if questions, but they're always negative. So what if it doesn't work? What if I don't make enough money? What if I fail? And I always encourage my clients to turn it on its head and go, what if I do make enough money? What if I do succeed? What if I can make it work? Turn it on its head and start training yourself to look for the good, the positive, the growth, rather than the playing small, limiting yourself, keeping yourself in a situation that you don't want. And I'm always very clear, working for yourself isn't for everybody, but if it is for you, you should definitely explore it. Life's too short not to explore it.
Absolutely. I came up with a quote, and this may not be verbatim, but a couple of years ago, I was talking with a lot of people about just struggles and obstacles. And it seems like every time I get a step ahead, I get 2 steps back. And I came up with this thought of obstacles are basically the stepping stones that help us reach new heights and new levels of understanding. Because what we are presented with these challenges, and when we get presented with these challenges, we either succumb to them or we overcome them. And if we overcome them, then we've learned, we've grown, we've gotten to a new level, we're new heights, we're no longer the same person we were. And now, like yourself, you can help other people step over those hurdles or create new opportunities. And, I've shifted my mindset to where I used to be stressed over obstacles and it would really stress me out. Now I almost look forward to them because I know what's going to happen as a result. Do I like them all the time? No, that would be a lie. Sometimes I just want to not be a punching bag and let things flow smoothly. But also knowing when we have those opportunities is what I would call them, opportunities for growth. We do become better people and have a bigger impact. We'll improve our story. So with your book, tell everybody about your background real quick, because I know you touched a little bit on you had a corporate job, things like that. Tell us a little bit, what was that background with you before you decided to do your own thing?
So like pre-kids, I always worked in the motor industry. I don't know why, I just kind of fell into that. But when I went back to work after I'd had my children, I suddenly got drawn into the area of people development. So I worked for a weight loss organization. Then I worked for the biggest pharmacy retailer in the UK in people development. So in like leadership development, coaching, training people up. And then I worked, my last role was for an entrepreneurial pub company. So I'd always been working in this people development field. I'd been helping people to see that if they like applied themselves, if they reflected, if they could see where they needed to do some work, then actually they could achieve so much. So I'd always been helping people to take those steps forward and almost to believe in them so that they could believe in themselves. Because I think sometimes it takes somebody external to say, do you know what, Ian, you could do that, for you to then believe you could do it. Not the same for everybody, but I think often that's the case. So I'd always had this real love of people. People have always been the best bit of any job I've ever done. People management can be tricky at times, but people are amazing because they are brilliant and challenging, but amazing, and their potential is uncapped. And I just, in my last corporate role, I set up, so the company I worked for grew from quite a small pub company to massive. And I was responsible for managing what the development looked like for everybody across the business, whether it was in a craft-based role or whether it was in a step up into management, whether it was a new site opening, whether it was an apprentice, but all of these things to make sure that people were actually kind of fulfilled, sustained, enjoyed their role, wanted to stay at the company, right? So you obviously want to retain your staff. Better to keep your workforce than keep turning staff over. But I realized that when I was there, that actually I watched people go from, so here we would say from the floor, like in hospitality, we'd say from the floor. So somebody who was, working behind the bar, or waitress, waiter, who then stepped up to be an assistant manager, deputy general manager, do you see what I mean? And it was amazing to watch those people grow because they'd had the support, they'd had the nurture, they'd had some training, they'd had coaching, they'd had mentoring, and they were able to really succeed. And when I left the corporate world, I don't think I quite connected that that's what I was going to do for my client. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I quite knew that's what I was going to do, but that's what I ended up doing.
You touched on something that I want to go back to, because I think it's something that's overlooked so often, and it's so powerful and so important. And first of all, congratulations. Because I heard you say we started with this company and it was small, and then we grew it and scaled it to massive. So that doesn't happen easily, right? There's strategy. There's a lot that goes into creating that. But what I heard, and I really wanted to point out, because I love that you brought this up, and I think it's so important for so many businesses, is investing in your people. When you build your people up, you're investing in them. When we invest in our people, now we're helping them grow as individuals. They feel a sense of purpose and why they're there. They feel inclined to loyalty. They want to stick around. And I think that's something that so many businesses overlook, is they look at top dollar. They don't look at their people. They don't look at their human resources. They don't look at how do we build up our people so we can build up our company. And the fact that you brought that up is beautiful.
And, in the UK, there's this saying, and a lot of companies use it. They say, we grow our own. And it's, most of them say it and they don't actually do it. They just say we grow our own because it sounds really good. Like we develop internally, blah, blah, blah. They don't really do it. It's just lip service. But actually the company that I worked at, and they still do it. So I left there 3 years ago. Real focus on actually growing people from within. And actually, at the time that I left, 80% of their managers were grown from the floor. So they grew them. So they were engaged in the culture. They were recognized for all the great things that they did. In fact, pub company, right? Pubs are open every day of the year. One day they close and they have a big festival, and they just had it on Monday last week. And I just saw a post on Facebook. Some friends with quite a lot of people who still work there, right? And somebody said, one of the managers said, what an amazing company to work for. Absolutely loved it, because it was the day to come together. When in hospitality, you're working all the hours when people, Christmas, people want to celebrate. They're the ones that are serving you. So they shut the pubs and they get to let their hair down. And my friend said, what an amazing company to work for. Really, they can see that they are treated as individuals and respected and, are developed accordingly.
That is great. So along your journey, did you come across struggles? What would you say are some pain points of what you've done? And I mean, even with what you're doing now with your own business, with your coaching, with writing a book, for our audience, what are some things you've either overcome or feel like would be important for people to know if somebody wanted to write a book or somebody wanted to start this journey? What tips and tricks could you give them?
I think the biggest, one of the early, really big lessons I learned was I was probably quite naive about how long it takes to grow an audience and to to attract people in to you and what you do. Like I kind of thought, oh, well, and maybe that's why I've written the book as well. I'll leave my job and, I'll be able to build up an audience and people will buy from me. No, it takes ages because you have to work on that know, like, and trust. People have to really connect in with you and buy into who you are. So be patient, I guess, is my first tip. Be patient because things will take longer than you think. And that's not being negative, it's the truth. And I know we talked about the good, bad, and the ugly. There's a lot of myths put out on social media around, make six figures in your first 3 months or 6 months, make this much a month. I turned over this much money in my first year. I talk about it in my book. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I'm saying I think that's the exception. And usually people who hit the ground running and make a success of their business in the first year, financially successful business, they've probably had a business before, they've probably got an audience, they're probably a seasoned kind of business owner. I was completely new in, so I've had to learn it all, completely new into it, and it does take time. So it does take time, but don't give up, because I always kind of felt like, oh, I never wanted to give up, but if I when people said, oh, is it a bit hard? I'd be like, no, because I know I'm on the cusp. I used to keep saying, I know it's coming, it's coming. And it's happened now, but it's believing that change is going to come for you.
Being able to visualize it and create it in your mind and say, hey, and refusing to give up. So many people give up right before they get to that point where they need to be.
Yeah.
When they say, I'm done. And then, I think it was Will Smith one time. I was watching one of his little short videos, and he talked about the biggest successes, the biggest elevation of our life is on the other side of fear.
Yes.
It's that's when beauty happens. That's when transformation happens, is when we step out. I think he was talking about skydiving, and he was petrified.
Oh.
And then he went skydiving. It was like one of the most blissful moments of his life. And
I'm going to take his word for that, Ian. Now you're not going to catch me skydiving. But it's interesting you say that, because when I was releasing my book, the book came out on the 30th of March, and in January, so I put it into the publishers, and we were just going through we proofreading it and proofreading it and proofreading it some more. And I was just going through a real moment of, oh God, what, I was really taking me to a level that I hadn't been to before. There's that saying, new level, new devil. I was at this level where I was absolutely petrified of what will people say, all the stuff that I go to my clients about, but it shows, it happens, maybe this is the ugly bit, we talked about all the bad bit. Just being honest, like the fear of what will people will say, what will people think, will they buy it, what if I get a 1-star review, what if people think I'm a show off, what if all of these what ifs. And basically I went to London to an event. Do you know Gabby Bernstein?
I don't.
Okay, so she's a manifestor. So she's, I think she's Canadian. She came over to the UK and she did this event, and she picked half a dozen people to be up on stage. And I knew she was going to pick me because I just decided she was going to pick me, and she did. And I got up on stage and I was like talking it all out. And then she's saying, so that's kind of what your book's about. And I was like, yeah. Oh, you make it sound so easy. But it was so great. 5 minutes with her on stage just got me to see that my message and what I want to get out is far more important than any of the fears that I had. So my ability to impact people's lives and to help them and to show them a way, that is so much more powerful than that kind of nervousness and the fear and the kind of terror I had in me. And actually I got past all of that, and it's fine. And then, I'm sure I'll find something else that I'm going to get nervous about, but actually right now I'm okay.
And I think that's beautiful. First of all, the whole, what you said, just being able to sit with somebody for a couple of minutes and seeing that in your own mind, your own releasing that fear, but also recognizing that there's going to be more to come. And
yes,
I don't think there's ever, you said new level, new devil. And I really like that. And people have this perception that when we hit a certain area, or when I make this much money, or when I have this many employees, when I have this many sales, whatever, all of a sudden the problems go away, and they don't go away. They just shift. They transition.
Yeah, they're different. Yeah.
They're different. And the strategies and problems you had when you were making, let's say, 50 to 150,000 are going to be a lot different from 250 to 500,000, from 500 to a million. They don't, the problems or the situations are going to change. They're not going away. They just shift. Just like the systems that got you to 100,000 aren't going to get you to 500. The ones from 500 aren't getting you to a million. So you got to constantly be shifting and evolving with strategy, with how we do things, which the way in which we impact. But like, also, we also are going to have different struggles and different. Now you have different, if you want to scale, you have to have employees, you have to have systems in place, you have to have procedures.
Yeah.
If you don't have those, you're going to struggle more. Then you build those up, and then you have to reinvent the wheel. There's so much out there that, it's true. But I love the fact that you talked about, like, I would call it like being our own worst enemy, right? The what ifs, and I think we all have those what if questions.
Yeah.
And being able to pivot them. What if I fail? Well, what if you succeed? What if I don't make enough money? What if you do make enough money? What if you make more money than you ever thought you could? Well, what if nobody likes me? What if people do like you? And switching that is really, I think that's powerful for anybody, no matter what stage of business you're in, whether you're first starting out or you're, 7-8 figures. It doesn't matter. We all have those questions, and being able to overcome those to get to that next level is great. Did you want to, I know you talked briefly about your book. Did you want to share anything about the book specifically, some of the stuff that people might find in there, or anything you want to talk about that process?
Yeah, so the book is based on my the dream transition method, which is my 6-step method to get you from idle daydreams transitioning into your wildly successful freedom-based business. So often we want to do something, but because we don't know exactly how to get there, or we don't know what we're going to get from it, or we lack the confidence, or we're feeling a bit low energy about it, or we allow ourselves to talk ourselves out of it almost immediately, which we do because we keep it in our brain. And you think, oh, that's a great idea. Oh, I'd love to do that. And then it was almost immediately you go, oh no, oh, I couldn't do that. Oh, no, I wouldn't be able to do that. Oh, okay. And I want to encourage the reader to get out of that. So basically, by following my 6-step method, it's a kind of logical way that you work through, so that you're building that mindset all the way through until you get to the point. So you follow the 6 steps, you get to the point where you're actually transitioning. And one of the steps is about creating an action plan. And people say, well, I don't know how to do it because I've never done it before. Well, anything you have ever done in your life, you learn how to do, because you were born and you didn't know how to do anything. So you've learned how to do everything, and you can learn how to do something else. And you might not know exactly the way. There's that whole thing about, if you got in your car and you didn't use the sat nav, how would you know where to go? Well, if you've never done it before, you won't know where to go. But I bet you any money you could think of 5 things that might help you. And those 5 things might be, doing some research, speaking to somebody who's done it before, listening to a podcast like yours or mine, reading a book. There might be 5 different things that you could do. And when you did those 5, by the time you got to the end, you would have thought of another 5, because that process will keep rolling. So you've got the action plan, but the key thing is you actually do something with it. So many people sit in procrastination because they're frightened. So if I just share with you, my daughter's learning to drive, and her friend was over last night, and I said, oh, how are you getting on with the driving? And she said, oh, I've not started yet. And I said, why not? Oh, I'm a bit scared. And I said, of what? General coaching questions. Well, I'm just a bit scared of it. But of what? Oh, I just don't know if I'll be able to do it. And I said, I think the longer you put it off, the worse it's going to get. So I dropped her off today, and I said, right, I want you to get that driving lesson booked in and text me when you've done it. And she's like, all right. But I thought, the longer we procrastinate and we build this thing up to be much bigger than it needs to be, if you actually started taking little steps, you said about your obstacles, but, take your little steps, and each step is going to take you closer to where you want to be. And they don't have to be massive steps. They can be small steps. They can be the size of step you feel comfortable to take, but they will help you to progress. So basically, when you read the book, you'll start, I'll be kind of building up your mindset all the way through. You'll get to the end and you will be taking action. You will be creating that transition. And the nice thing about the method is that you can revisit it again and again. So whatever you're doing, you can go back to it and say, okay, I'm feeling a bit disconnected from this. So the M in the method is for the magic, which I think is about all the joy you're going to get when you've achieved the thing that you want to do. You know, really reconnecting with that magic. Why did I want to do this? What was I going to get from it? And often when I ask clients that initially, they'll say something really functional. Well, I'll get to have my own, you know, be my own boss. Okay, and then what? Or what does that mean? You need to get past that. You need to get in the feelings, the thoughts, the emotions, all of that. When you are connected with that element, you know, when you're connected with that magic, I think you won't give up because you'll be thinking, that is so important to me.
Understanding the why and then the result of the why.
Exactly, exactly.
Because
And
the why is what drives us.
absolutely. So for me, when I first started, what I wanted to do was I've got teenagers. I wanted to be at home around more for them because with teenagers, you know, they choose when they want to speak to you. If they want to talk to you, they want to talk to you. So I'm talking to you from my office at the bottom of my garden. So I'm at home quite a lot, you know, in and out. I wanted to be at home for them, but my kind of work life and what I base everything I do on, well, my whole life is based on the principle of 4 F's: freedom, flow, fulfillment, and fun. And everything I do is based on one or more of those 4 F's. It just gives me the best life.
I love it. And I think that's a great point to, you know, I'd love to end it right there on the 4 F's. That is amazing. What I would say is, are you willing to share just your contact info? If you want to get in touch with you, I know you mentioned a couple socials. You know, how can they access your book? And I know Magdalena will put all this down in the comments later, but you know, please feel free to share how people can find you if they're just listening.
Yeah, definitely. So if you look for me on Instagram, I am the Dream Transition Mentor. Bit of a mouthful. Or you can look me up on my website, lauracruise.com. So cruise, CRUISE, lauracruise.com. And you'll find all the information, all the things that we talked about, links to my book, links to my podcast, how to work with me. Get involved, because if there's something you really want to do, don't just dream it, you can do it.
Awesome. I love it. And then also, link to your book is on Amazon. What would they look
Yes.
up for that?
Yeah, so they could look up Dream It and Do It. It's a pink cover, bright pink cover, or they look my name up. You'll see me on my author page on there.
Excellent. So for those of you listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Laura, thank you so much for jumping in with us. It was a pleasure meeting you and having to get to know you a little bit better. I look forward to connecting with you as well. And then for our listeners, we have a new episode each and every week. Please make sure you click the subscribe, the notification bell, all the bells and whistles, YouTube, all the different podcast channels, all that. Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you, listeners, and we'll see everybody next week.